Hello guys, welcome to this video where we'll be talking about our functions and nested loops, more functions and nested loops. It's a continuation of the previous projects, functions and nested loops. So if you don't understand that, you want to go and understand it before coming back to the continuation of it. Here we'll be looking at the quiz questions first and then the tasks, the explanations. For our first question, question 0 says, what is the output of the following piece of code? So we have an integer variable called I, and then we have a for loop here that says I is originally equal to 48. Now, as long as I is less than 58, we want to increment I by 1. So as long as 48 is less than 58, we want to increment I by 1. So originally you would think that would give us 48, 49, 50, 51, which is this first option. But in our printf statements, we have a %c. And when we use a %c to get an integer, we are converting it to its ASCII code or binary form. And if we use that, then 48 would assume the ASCII code or binary form of 0. And it would go all the way to 58, which would assume binary form of 9 from 0 all the way to 9. So we would have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. As long as it is less than 10 values starting from 0 itself. Because this is a for loop, it loops through all starting from 0 and then goes all the way till 10. After looping through from 0, it's going to increment to 1, 2, 3. So the option we choose here is this second one. Let's go to question 1 now. What is the output of this following piece of code? We also have an integer variable called I in this question 1, and I is initially set to 0. And we are saying why I is less than 10, we want to get the modulus of I, that is the remainder of I, in 2. So this is not a percentage sign. This is simply if I divides 2, what would our remainder be? So let's go ahead and see now. 0. First, our loop starts from 0, and so y 0 is less than 10. We want to go ahead to see what this remainder would be. So what would the remainder of 0 into 2 be? Of course, the remainder would be 0 because 0 divided by 2 gives us no remainder. So we have 0 first here. We have 0 in the second option. It automatically means the third option is out of the way. So we are left between these two options now. And now let's see more. Now we are saying after it gets this line, after it prints out as 0 for us, it should increment by 1. So I becomes 1, and while 1 is less than 10, we should check the remainder of 1 divided by 2. And that will give us the remainder of 1. If 1 divides 2, we would have a remainder of 1. So 1 modulus 2 gives us a remainder of 1. And so we are going to now come here and choose 1 as our second option. We can also see 1 appears here in the second option. And so we are still stuck between these two answers. Now, after getting 1 here, modulus 2, which will give us a remainder of 1, we are going to increment 1 again. And when we increment 1, we incremented from 0 and it gave us 1. Now, I want to increment from 1, so it will give us 2. And then we could say 2, as long as 2 is less than 10, in this case now, 2 modulus 2, and 2 modulus 2 gives us 0 because 2 divided by 2 leaves us with no remainder. So is there a remainder? No, we get 0 here printed out. So here we are having 2, which is wrong, so we have 0 here printed out. And so we are stuck with this first option. Now you could go ahead to validate the rest of this by saying increment 2 now, and it gives us 3. As long as 3 is less than 10, we want to do 3 modulus 2. Does it give us a remainder? Yes, it does. And so 1 is being printed out because it gives us a remainder. We increment again and we get 4, and then 4 modulus 2, no remainders because 4 divided by 2 leaves us with no remainders at all. So we go ahead to print 0 here. 5 modulus 2 gives us a remainder. We'll print out 1. 6 modulus 2 gives us no remainder. So we'll do all of this until we get to a number that is less than 10. So we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, less than 10. That's it for question 1. Let's move over now to question 2. It says, what is the output of the following piece of code? And what are we to do here? We have an integer variable I. We have a for loop that loops through each of them, and it's starting from 0. So as long as 0 is less than 10, it would come here and increment and then move two places. We are multiplying by 2, so it would move 2 places further to give us the result. So first off, as long as 0 is less than 10, we are initializing from 0. So we would have 0 down here, and we also have 0 down here. So automatically this option is out of the way because we don't have 0 here. And then it would move 2 places. So the multiplication sign allows us to move forward or times 2 places. And if we are going to do that, so we say moving 2 places now, 0 will now move 2 places, which will be 0, 1, 1, 2, 2 places. We now have 2 here. Move another 2 places, come here, increment, and move another 2 places. We'll have 4, we'll have 6, we'll have 8, we'll have 10, 12, 14, 16, and 18. All these now are less than 10 because 0 is 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. When you count all of them, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So all is less than 10, and since we're moving 2 places, that's why we have 10, 12. So it's not 1, 0, 1, no, it's 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. And that's how we get the answer to question 2. Let's go to question 3 now. What is the output of the following piece of code? So in this case, we are going to I is originally initialized to 0, and then we are going to be, as long as I is less than 10, as long as 0 is less than 10, we want to do something which is, we want to start, would increment the value here and come over here and use our division operator. So what do we do here now? We say this I 0 now is outside of our while loop. So as long as I is less than 10, which is I plus plus. So as long as 0 is less than 10, it comes here and then increment. So 0 becomes 1. Since it increments first before reading our statement, so 0 becomes 1. And then we print the result of 1 divided by 2 because 0 has become 1. So if 1 divides 2, would get a decimal number. So get a number 0 point something. But since we are dealing with an integer, a decimal number, we can't print 0 points. So only take the first value, which is 0 here. So we have 0 in the 3 options. Now let's continue to go further to see which one is correct. So it's now going to give us 0 and then go back to the loop. So here now has been incremented to 1. So while 1 is less than 10, is going to increment again to 2. And 2 would then give us we'll now do 2 divided by 2. And if we do 2 divided by 2, we get our answer. So let's just come here and do 2 divided by 2, and the answer is equal to 1. So here automatically would print 1. So 1 would appear here now because 2 divided by 2 gives us 1. And then we'll come over up again and increment our value now. So it will be 2 now, and y 2 is less than 10, we increment to 3. And then 3 divided by 2, let's see that now. So 3 divided by 2, and it gives us 1.5. Since we are dealing with a decimal, we cannot include the points. So we take 1 again and put it here. When you now increment, 3 becomes 4, and 4 divided by 2 gives us 2. 5 divided by 2 gives us 2 point something. We take only the 2 and put it here. 6 divided by 2 gives us 3. 7 divided by 2 gives us 3 point something, and we are not going to use the points. So that's how we go all the way till it's not less than 10. So let's see our digits in all. We have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All in all, not less than 10. So the answer to question 3 is going to be this third one, because we're using the division operator. Now, question 4 says, what is the output of this following piece of code? We have a -9, which could also be an integer, which is legal. So this is an integer. Now, why -9 is less than 0? I want to print f the digits and then -I. So this minus, and so why -9 is less than 0? We want to print out this -I. So what will be I here? I will be 9. So minus will give us a positive value. But if we didn't have this minus sign, we would print out negative -9 -8. But since we have this 9 here, minus cancels themselves, and we can now print out 9. Now we want to increment. So after printing out 9, we go ahead and increment. So as long as less than 0, we now increment backward to 8. Now we go to -8. Here turns to -8 too, and then minus cancels themselves. We print out 8. We go all the way to 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. So why 0 is less than 0? We want to print out this, and so the first one becomes our option, because in this case we are going to print out the number first before incrementing. So the answer to question 4 has to be the first option. Question 5 now. Sorry, the answer to question 4 cannot be the first option because 0 is not less than 0. So the answer would be this. So 0 is not less than 0, and we can't print that out. Screen. So let's go to question 5 now. And what is the output of the following piece of code? So what piece of code do we have here? Int I. Now we have I is equal to 9. So the variable I is 9, and we are saying why I decrements. I minus. So while I is decrementing, print out its values as it decrements. So it's going to decrement up until 0 because it's going to decrement up until doesn't have a positive value again. And using that, we are now going to say I decrements, it goes to 8, comes to 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, up until we get to 0. Next up, what is the output of the following piece of code? So we're also decrementing in this case, but there's something called a prefix and a postfix decrementer, and this is a prefix decrementer. It decrements first before actually printing. So I here 9, it automatically decrements to 8. So I becomes 8 and goes down, prints 8. I becomes 7, immediately prints 7 and goes all the way till I is 1. But since this I is 9 here, is when it enters here, it becomes 8 automatically. So in this decremental, this prefix decremental here, I immediately becomes 8. But here, I is 9 minus 1, which is 8. So here we can say 9 minus 1. But in here, I becomes 8 because it decrements this value first. It does not do 9 minus 1. It's 8 rather. And so when it's print out 8. Here becomes 7 immediately. Here becomes 6. Here becomes 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And so when here becomes 0, it's not going to now print out 0 because in this case, here was decrementing. So it was now 1 minus 1, which would give us 0. But in this prefix, here first decremented. And so it came, this 9 eventually moved down to 0. And it did not print out 0 again because 0 is the value where it should stop. So what we have here would be 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All in all, the characters are 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we go on here now and print out this first one would be our answer. Now we'll move over to question 7, and question 7 says, what is the return value of the following function? So this is a function that has a block of statements designed to do something. And in the print statements, we are going to print out 12 because that's what we have as our decimal here, as our digits. But here it says, what is the return value? So don't get this confused. We are not saying what would this print out. We are saying what would be the return value. So if you come here now and in your editor, you could just try to print out this. It's going to print out 12. But look at the return value we set for it. The return value is 98. So the return value of the following function would be 98. Come to the last one, question 8, and says, well, what is the return value for the following function? Now let's look at it, because the following function now was not set like in the previous one. It was set to 98, where you can see here 98. But in this function, it wasn't set to 98, it was set to I. So now let's see how our for loops help us to get the return value of this. This integer is I. Now I is equal to 0 at first. So as long as 0 is less than 10, it would increment. So we'll have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now 9 is less than 10. So when we increment, we go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. For each of the increments, we are going to print out I. So when we move, we'll print out 0, then we'll print out 1, we'll print out 2, we'll print out 3. So you may be confused to choose 9. But remember, they are asking us what is the return value and not what this would print out. Now, after it gets to 9, because 9 is less than 10, this loop is completed. And it's going to leave the loop When it leaves the loop, it would come to this return block. And after it leaves the loop, it gets incremented to 10. But it doesn't print out 10 because 10 was not part of our loop condition. So when it leaves this loop, it gets incremented to 10. So the return value of I becomes 10. But what you get printed out is only what the loop says it should print out, which is 0 to a number less than 9. So the return value is 10. But if you print this out, you are going to get 0 up until 9. So don't get this confused. We are saying return value and not exactly output. All right, that's it for the quiz questions. I'm sure you must have followed along and this should be correct. Now let's check if we've actually done any mistakes and let's go back and look at it. Or if we are correct, let's know now by our checker. All right, so there we go. All our quiz was successful and now we can move over to the tags. Remember what we are doing now is function and it's just a continuation of what we did last time. So it should be pretty much simple or maybe difficult based on your experience from the other tags about functions. Let's walk through now from tag 0. So first off is to check the requirements we need and then come back to our tags to check the tags questions. Now, the main essence of this video is to teach you the thought process and what to do, how to analyze it. If you have errors, you are software engineers, so go ahead and debug them and fix the issues. All right, so now let's go to the requirements first of all. So in the requirements here, we are allowed to use VI, Vim, or Emacs. And if you followed my previous tutorials, I was always emphasizing on the need to start using your VI or Emacs. And this is the reason. Now you don't use shell to write these answers, you use a text editor. So if you don't know how to use it, get familiar with it. Next up, we should have a README file at the root folder of this project. So we are going to create a folder that this project would be in and then a README file here. And we are not allowed to use any functions of the standard library for our files. We can use putchar and basically those are the main requirements. Then we have this one that says the functions of the prototype. All our prototype functions should be included in our main.h file and we should not forget to push our main.h file. So our header file is the main.h. You're already familiar with that from the last project. Now, with that requirements in mind, you know we are going to have a main.h file and now we can start tag 0. Write the function that checks for uppercase character. The prototype is this and it will return 1 if this character is uppercase, otherwise it's going to return 0. All right, so what's the first thing we do now? We go ahead to create our main.h file. Very important. Now in the last tutorial, I created all the main.h file one by one, but in this tutorial, I'm going to create all the functions from the main.h file at once. How do I do that? Let's go ahead now. In my terminal window, to check what I have now, if I list them out, you can see I have 0x1, 2, and 3 folders. So I'm going to go ahead and create the fourth one with the make directory command. From here, so this is the directory we're going to create, or this is the folder we're going to create. I'm going to copy this and paste it down here. Now I can seed into 0x4. And in here now, I list out what I have. So let me clear to ensure a clean working environment. I'm going to reduce my screen size so you see everything I do so clearly. Let me reduce it a little and keep it at 18. All right, 18 is still okay. Now in here, what's the first thing I want to create? A readme file. Remember your requirements, a readme.md, and yeah, you write in the description. So for me, I'm just going to put description. You save and quit from vi, and how do we do that now? We've quitted from vi, so when we list out what we have, we see we have a readme file. Then we are going to create our main.h file. And inside our main.h, we are going to write all the function prototypes. So how do we do that? Last time I explained the basic default write-ups when you want to create your main.h file. And you do this. So in the inf ndef and then define. So main h. Now in here, and to end it, this is how we end it. We come here and put end define. So in between here, we can now put all the our function prototype. We don't have to write our function prototype or crack our brains and think about how we get function prototype. They always give it to us here. So this is the function prototype of tax 1. Copy this and paste. So I'll copy this, I'll come to my terminal window and paste it. Let's go to the function prototype of tax 1. This is it. So just copy it and paste it. We'll go to the next one too, copy it and paste it. So the next one is tax 2. Copy it and paste it. Next one should be so you see I'm just copying all of them. Just to make it clear to you, you can always see your function prototype. So the things that will be in your main.h file are these, the prototype here. And you can see them at the start of each task. So let's go to task 4. Five. Six. Seven. 8. Go ahead and do that for your files. Basically, you come there and copy all of them up until 10. So copy and paste. And in our tax 9, you can see that you don't have any function prototype to use. So after copying all your function prototypes, you come back to tax 0. Now, all we've done is fix our main.h file. So we don't have to go back to main.h file on each instance. Now you want to save and quit from vi, and then so when you list out, you have main.h, then you have readme.md files. And what's our first task now? Now you're almost done with all the requirements. Now you can start thinking about your task. We are going to write a function that's going to check for uppercase character. So how are we going to do that? They say the standard library gives us one option, but what we are to use now, we are not allowed to use the standard library. Remember that. So we can't use any of these built-in functions. We'll have to create our own function. Now, this is the purpose of this task. You are going to create the function that checks for uppercase character. This is your thought process. This is the most important part of this task. How do you create a function that checks for uppercase character? What is that function going to do? The function will return 1 if this C here is uppercase. Otherwise, the function is going to return 0. So what are you going to do? You can see a clue. It says if C is uppercase, return 1. Otherwise, return 0. So at this point, most people get confused. But look at it there. It's telling you that to create your function, you are going to be checking if C is uppercase. And if C is not uppercase, then C is going to return 0. But if C is uppercase, it's going to return 1. So how do we do that? Let me walk you through now. We create our tags file 0. So you know the way I do all my files, I go ahead to create all of them with a single command. So that's the same thing I'm going to be doing here. Rather than creating file 0, file 1, file 2, I'm just going to create all with a single command. So I'll copy this, paste it here, put a space. After pasting, please press a space before you paste the next one. Copy this again, paste it here, separated by a space. Come to task 2, copy this again, press this paste, go to task 3, go to task 3, copy this again, paste it here, space, file 4, and it was able to create about 4 files for us. So let's stop there. So I've created 4 files now. So the first one I want to veer into is my file 0, this upper, and then we get into it. So what do we do here? Remember, we are going to use if now to check if C is uppercase and then to return 1, otherwise return 0. Now, what are we going to put in our header file? If you watch my last tutorial, this part wouldn't be strange to you at all, as we are going to include main.h. So the include is going to drag contents from the main.h, and any contents from main.h that is inside this our contents, this file, it's going to include it. Next up, we have to give a documentation for Betty. So we use a multi-line comment to do that. And the function we are working with is upper. So we are not working with the main function, and that's why we are using is upper. If we are working with the main function, we would have used main.c. All right, the function is going to check for uppercase letters. And then at C is the character to be checked. Now we are going to return either 0 or 1. That will be our return statement. Now we can close this Betty description. So apart from Betty, this describes what your code is going to do. So it's very important that you always use a documentation. So what's the next step now? You don't have to bother yourself too much. Look at the prototype. Look at our main function here. Int is upper C. So we are going to copy this now from here and come here, and this is going to be our main function. Remember, this is what we are checking for, is upper. So that's why we have is upper here rather than the main, because we are working with the is upper function, our own function that we've created. So congrats guys, you are a programmer that's now creating different kind of functions. And in here, what we are going to do is use the if statement to check for our character. That's just it. It's as simple as this. We'll use the if statement to check if this character C is uppercase, and then it will return 1, otherwise we'll return 0. So how do we do that? If your brackets now, if the character C is greater than or equal to character A in uppercase, and the character C is lesser than or equal to character Z in uppercase, we are now going to return 1. Else return 0. So why are we using character A and character Z? You can see this character A is uppercase, this character Z is uppercase. We are simply saying if C, what we are checking for now, C is greater than, in case you're wondering where this C came from, it came from Alx. They said we should use C. So the tag says we should use C here. If C, so that's how we got our C now, is greater than or equal to A. So it can never be less than A, capital A, because we are checking if the character is uppercase or if it's capital later. So if C is greater than or equal to A and C is lesser than or equal to Z, want to go ahead to return 1. That means the characters B, C, D, E, F, all of them are greater than A, but they are, and then it ends at Z. Any of these characters return 1, otherwise return 0. It's that simple. That's all we have to do for our task today. For this first question, now we can save and quit. Next thing we want to check is if Betty has any issues. So we'll do Betty 06 upper, and let's see. So you see we have our first issue. If you are still having problems with Betty, I'm going to explain with this issue now how to solve it. Look at it. You have 0 is upper here. This is your file. Betty said in line 14, you have an error called trailing white space. Now, I've explained this before. 1 error, 0 warning. So this is our only problem in line 14. Now you're going to go back to your code and look for the line 14. This is where you can see your line. So currently we are in line 16. If I move up with my arrow key, we are in line 15. And then up again, we are in line 14. Instead, we have white space. Now, after this else, can you see how my cursor is moving? Now, Betty does not like this. Doesn't like this one space. It doesn't like it. You can see how it's moving here now. This space. So Betty doesn't like this, and it's saying we should remove it. So backspace once, and if you try to move your cursor now to the right, it won't move because you don't have that white space again. So that's how to solve Betty issues of trailing white space. We would save and quit now. Now let's see if Betty faults us. No, it doesn't. It returns our function here is upper. So we are done with tag 0. But last time I got a lot of questions saying I tried to compile my program and it's not running. I tried to compile and it's not running. And that's true, it won't run. So let's use the compilation command here to see if it would run. And then I would explain what you need to do in case you want to compile and run here. So Now I've pasted this. I got this compilation message from Alx here. You can see the compilation command gcc wall pendatic, all of this. Now just press enter. Now it's giving you an error. It says no such file or directory. What error? 0 main.c. It's saying no such file or directory. So for you to be able to compile your program, you need a file called 0 main.c. And how do you get this? Come back here now and go back to the requirements now. It says in the following examples, the main.c file as shown as examples. You can use them to test your functions, but you don't have to push them to your repo. If you do, we won't take them into account because we'll use our own main.c files at compilation. What this basically means is that you have to use the main.c file in the example if you want to test your functions when you write them. So where are the main.c files in the examples? Everything here in between here are the examples. Now this file in itself is the main.c file. Look at it, main.c file. And so you can use this main.c file in the example. You can add it to your code. You could go and create this main.c file and add everything in here to test your function. So it means we'll come to here now and just copy this 0 main.c, copy it, and use vi to create it, since we'll be writing into the file. So when you create it, come back here now and copy everything in here, everything up until this point. Now copy it, come here and paste them. So once you paste them like this, just save and quit from this page. Now you can use this main.c file to test your examples. How? If you go back here and copy this compile message you have, gcc. Now let's copy that now and see what we have. So copy this and come here, paste, press enter. Now you see we don't have any errors again. So the program has finished compiling. To display our results, see what we want to check if the results will be the same. To display the results, come here and copy this next line. Dots, from the dots here, just come here, copy this next line and paste it. Now you can see the results we have. A uppercase is equal to 1 and then a lowercase is equal to 0. Now let's see the results we are supposed to have correct. So basically we've tested our code for tax 0 and you can see it's correct, right? So you can use this main.c file if you want to test your code, because now the checker is not available up until 12. So you can use this main.c file to test your code. From what I have now, I know my code of tax 0 was correct. Why I didn't use this main.c file in the last task was because Alx are not using this main.c file. They have their own. So this is just you using it to test your own. And if you're sure what you did is correct, without testing it, you could move on to the next task. So when we list out what we have now, you can see we have 0 is upper, we have 0 is upper.c, which is we have 0 main.c. But this is the file Alx is concerned about. How that was clear enough, let's go to tax 1 now. So tax 1 is digits.say. What's the question for tax 1? Let's go ahead and find out now so we can start solving it. We are going to check a function. So tax 0 and 1 is similar now. I want you to attempt tax 1 using what we did in tax 0. Go ahead and attempt it. Let me leave you with a clue. A function that checks for digits 0 through 9. It's going to return 1 if C is a digit. Otherwise, it's going to return 0. So this function is going to check 0 through 9. what are you going to use? An if statement to check if 0, to check through 0 through 9. So you're going to use an if statement to check if we have digit of 0 to 9. If we have digit of 0 to 9, then we are going to return 1, otherwise return 0. So let me show you the thought process here in Notepad. I really want you to do this by yourself. And so what we are simply saying is that we are going to use an if statement. So use an if statement to check if we have numbers from 0 to 9. Return 1 if we have numbers from 0 to 9, else return 0. Now with this like dummy code here, go ahead and write the real code. Let's do that together now, and let's see how we do that. I hope you did attempt something. Now compare yours with mine. So the first thing I want to do is to include our header file, and in this case, include this is so popular to you now. You've done this a lot. Main.h. Now come down and we want to check for Betty description. You know how we do it. So what's the function we are working with? Is digits. And so how did I get this is digits? See it here is digits. Anything in here, that's what you're going to put in Betty description. All right, and this function is going to check if numbers are 0 to 9. Now, what will be the character to check? The character to check is C. So we are going to write down that the character to check is C. And we are going to return two things based on whatever the condition is, 0 or 1. Then we can end it. So now we are going to use this function that we have here. You can see I do most times, I just copy it and focus more on the logic. Then we come here, and if the character C is greater than or equal to, now I hope this is what you did, or maybe something similar, and the character C is lesser than or equal to 9. If these conditions are true, we want to return 1. Else, we want to return 0. Now, let me explain this. We are saying if the character C, remember the character C is the one we are checking, and we got that from our function here, is greater than 0. So 1 is greater than 0 or equal to 0. Remember, we are checking through character 0 to 9. So if the character is equal to 0 or greater than 0, that's what this sign means. Equal to is this one, greater than is this one. And if the character C is greater than or equal to 0, and this is and the character C is also lesser than or equal to 9. So it means if the character C is 10, this is going to return 0. But if character C is equal to 9 or is lesser than 9, 5, 6, 7 is going to return 1. This is exactly what we're asked to do. And so our job here is done. Once again, use Betty to check out if you're correct. And you can see we are correct. We don't have any issues. Now, someone is somewhere thinking, how do we check for our program? How do we compile our program? Basically, it's the same thing with what you did in tax. So I'm also going to do it in tax 1 to compile the program just to see if it. So you have to create a file called one main.c first off to be able to compile. You get it from your example here. Now we're going to use vi to create a file called main.c1. And in here, we are going to now, include everything here and copy this, come here and paste in everything. Then you can save and quit. Now, you can go ahead now to compile your program. Using this command, just the way you see it here, just copy it, copy, and then come down here and paste. Now, when you press enter, you see you're not going to have any errors. Then you come, your second command to display an output file is to copy this here and paste. Press enter. Now you have 1 and 0. So let's go back to what we're supposed to have from the example. Now you see the output, it says 0, 1, and this is exactly the same output we have here. Now you know, even without using the checker, that your tax is going to work. So why not? You can move on now to the next question, BI2. So for those wondering how to compile your programs, this is how to do it. Enjoy. Now it's time to go to tax 2. And let's look at tax 2 question. Collaboration is multiplication. Write a function that multiplies 2 integers. Now, from what we've discussed so far, should not be much of a stress. This is the prototype. Our function is simple. It's just going to multiply 2 integers. So we are going to multiply int a with int b. So let's go ahead now and do that. As always, you're going to include your header file. So you do include main.h, and then you come down and so what's the multiplication we want to perform now? What's the function? The function is a multiplication function, right? So we are going to use mul here, and it's simply going to multiply 2 integers, and a is the first integer. Int a is the first integer, so a is first integer, and then b is second integer. Now I have a return value. It's going to return the addition of the multiplication. Once again, you may not copy all I write word for word. Just go on and do your thing. You will still be correct. So we come here now to get our int prototype. Copy. That's after we've done this default one, and then paste it down here. We're writing a function to multiply 2 numbers, and that function says int a, int b, so that these are the 2 numbers we can multiply. So a number will be in int a and a number will be in b. What are we going to return? We are going to return the sum of a and b. So it's so simple, probably the easiest task for today. A times b. So what does this do? This is a a multiplication sign. So arithmetic operators in C, this is one of them. This sign here, this asterisk, is used to multiply. So it's going to multiply A times B. So in case, imagine if we had 10 here and we had 10 here. So it's going to do 10 times 10, which would give us 100. So this is how to fix up this tax and save and quit. If you want to compile your program, I've already taught you how to do that. But for this example, I'm not going to be compiling it again. And let's see if we have any issues with Betty. No, we don't. And let's move on now to tax 3. After tax 2 was clear enough, we move over to tax 3, and tax 3 should be about printing numbers. So let's go to our question and see what we have in tax 3. The numbers speak for themselves. So we are going to write a function now that prints numbers from 0 to 9, followed by a new line. We are going to use put char twice in our code. And this is our prototype. All right, let's go and see how we can do that. Come to your terminal now, and as usual, so this one is something you already know that I would use every time. So since we are going to use it every time, I'm just going to write it somewhere. I'm just going to write it somewhere, so I don't have to write it each and every code, include stdio, it's just me improvising. So, and then I'm also going to put my function. So I don't know my main function. So since I don't know my main function, I'm just going to leave here empty. And most times we'll be working with an at function. So, and I don't know it, so I'm just going to leave that empty and put a return value here too, so that every time I need to do this, I don't just have to type and type again and again. And I'm going to cover my brackets. So see how this is going to help me now. I'm just going to copy this and paste down here. So what's our main function for this one? The function is print number. So instead of typing out everything, I just come here to where I have print and type out print number. So that's my function, and that's just what I'll do. And then print num from 0 to 9. And it's going to, do we have any at? No, for this one we don't have any at. It's going to return, what's it going to return? Void. So how do I know it's going to return void? Look at it. Return. So yeah, it's now our function is going to return. For the other one, look, in this tax 8, our function doesn't return void. For that one, our function returns. You can see in this one, our function C is the parameter. But for that tax, this one now, this tax 4, not tax 8, sorry, in this tax 4 now, you can see our function returns void. So that's why I put. Let's go ahead and do it now. So I'm just going to copy this. As always, copy, come here, paste it out, and char C, and create a for loop for C equal to 0. So 0 here, and C less than or equal to 9, and then C plus plus. I hope you can read this code at this point. You should be able to do just that. I'm going to explain it, but first off, let me just finish with it. So we have to use put char twice, and this is the first one. We are going to print out single characters using char. Then the second time, we are going to use put char to print out our new line. And of course, So let me explain this now, what I just did. In case it's looking too vague for you. Remember our task asks us to print numbers between 0 to 9. So we are saying as long the character is originally 0, right? Now, as long as this character is less than or equal to 9. So as long as 0 is less than or equal to 9. So this C now, look at this C as 0. Now here, as long as 0 is less than or equal to 9, keep incrementing. And then this put char is after keep incrementing. Since we are not allowed to use the standard library, we can't use printf. That's why we use this put char now to print the numbers that it increments. So it's going to do 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and stop at 9. And then we're asked to print a new line, and that's why this code is here. I'm sure that was quite clear enough. And let's finish our code now with this last curly braces. Okay, save and quit. Now let's see if Betty has anything to tell us. And it's telling us no description found for print most numbers. Did I get it wrong? I got it wrong somewhere, so let me fix out my issue now. So watch me as I resolve it. So I copied the wrong um the wrong prototype here. So I'm going to change this now. So void print numbers, not print most numbers. Copy the wrong one from the Alx intranets. After changing that, let's check again. Hello, Betty. No issues. And there's no time. I'm just going to go to Alx 4 now, the print most numbers. And now look at how these things I've copied is going to help me. So I'm just going to paste it in here and type and type and type and type and type and type. So let's go to the task 4 task and see what we have to do. Write a function that prints numbers from 0 to 9 followed by a new line. Now look at the difference between this one and the first. It says do not print 2 and 4. So the difference between them is that we are not going to print 2 and 4. So it's basically the same thing we did in our task 3, we'll do in our task 4. Hey, go ahead and attempt it. That's how you learn. Don't just follow the video throughout. Go ahead and attempt your own things. Don't worry, failure is part of the process. And if you fail, try to understand why you failed and come back stronger. So let's go ahead and do it together now. As you by this time, you must have paused the video and then decided to attempt it. So we have our function prints most numbers, and it's going to print numbers except 2 and 4. All right, now, and it's going to return void as with the other case. Then come down and copy this prototype. So copy this and now we are going to set a character value to C, and for a for loop now would follow. For C, for each of the characters that are 0. So first of all, C is initialized to 0. That's what this first line does. Then the second line would be as long as C is greater than or equal to 9. Exactly the same thing we did in the first one. It's now going to increment C. Now, but we have a task on our hands, and that task is to except 2 and 4. It should not print out 2 and 4. Now, there are a couple of ways to do this, and one way is to write an if statement. If the character, so I'm going to use a not equal to operator. If C 2 or C is equal to 4, so let me go ahead and explain what I just did now. I know it may be sounding so complicated for you. And all right, so this is what we did in our for loop. This one is clear, right? Now I said if in this for loop now, if C, forget about this line first. If C is equal to 2 or this character is equal to 4, do not put char. Now that's what this line means. So if C is equal to 2 or C is equal to 4, do not put char, put char C. And then we can come on here and just put char and with a new line. And close our bracket. So let me explain it again. A character is C, first off. Now a for loop saying as long as first C is initialized to 0, first line. As long as 0 is less than or equal to 9, keep on incrementing. Now if you increment and you see that 0 has turned to 2 or 0 is now 4, do not print out those characters. For the rest, print them out and then put char, new line. Should be clear by now to you. So let me do this. Let me dent it to this and come here and save and quit. Now let me clear my terminal to ensure a clean working environment and vi4 Betsy to check for. Oh wow, in line 12 I'm missing a blank line after declaration. Now that's Betsy giving me a different warning that I'm missing a blank line after declaration in line 12. So let's go and check out line 12 and line 15, 14, 13, 12. So it's saying I'm missing a blank line. So after I declare, Betty wants me to, after this declaration, Betty wants me to put an enter here. This was where our put char is supposed to be. We made a mistake with indentation before we pasted it here, but it's supposed to be here. And that's fixed our problem. So Bessie has cleared us and that's it for the task 4. So I hope you understand now and you can see how we follow this. So we use put char twice in our code. We did not print 2 and 4, all of that. Over now, guys, to task 5. So let's see the question. It says, write a function that prints 10 times the numbers from 0 to 14, followed by a new line. And we're given the prototype here. And then we can only use put char 3 times in our code. Now, let's see how to do this. The first thing I want to do is to write a function that prints 10 times the numbers 1, from 0 to 14, 2, and then followed by a new line 3. So let me break this down again. We'll print a function that prints 10 times the numbers 1, from 0 to 14, 2, and then followed by a new line 3. Let's go now and try to do that. So I'm going to vi into my file and like always, I'm just going to copy this and paste it here. So this function is going to print in more numbers and does not have any return type. So more numbers and numbers, and it's going to print more numbers. So that's the description I'm going to give it. You could give it any description that seems good to you. This function doesn't have a return type because it's void, so you could write void or just no return. And then prototype here, and our starting point would be this function that says more numbers. So all we've been doing since is create our own custom functions to do different kind of things, and this one is just another one. So the first thing I'll do is to create two variables, int I and j, for the two part of our question. Remember, our question has two parts: print the number 10 times 1, and then print from 0 to 14 followed by a new line. So we are going to print out rows and then columns, and we are going to print out 10 rows. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then about 14 columns from 0 to 14. That's why I have two variables now. One will print out the 10 rows, and then one will print out the 0 to 14. Now I'll come here and put a for loop for I. Now I'm going to initialize I to 1. We've been working with 0 a lot, so this time let's do 1. But you could initialize yours to 0. And then I'm going to say for I, as long as it's less than or equal to 10, then next line I plus plus. Here next, I'm going to come, and inside here, I'm going to create another for loop and set it to j. This time, let's go back to working with 0. And as long as j is less than or equal to 14, we're going to do the next statement that says increments j by 1. And then we're going to have another for loop that says if j, so you could just follow along, and I would be doing the explanation shortly once I'm done. If j and is greater than or equal to 10, want to put char 1. You want to add 1 character to it. So after that, I'll come here now, and if it's not, want to put char j modulus 10 plus, now add a character, and that should be that for our statements. Then we're going to print a new line. So I know this is quite confusing, and I'll do my best to explain it shortly. But this would be our code, and so let me go ahead to explain how this code will work. So here's how it goes. The first off, we have our function here. Two variables. I've explained this, that we are going to set our role, and then about 10 rows, and then we'll print out 14 lines. So variable I will help us with the 10 rows, and that's what you see the code here. It's a for loop that starts with 1 and ends at 10. So it's going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10 rows. As long as it's lesser than or equal to 10 rows. So once 1, going to start with 1 now. 1 is lesser than or equal to 10. 1 is lesser than 10. So it's going to increment and come over to this for loop inside. So we have a for loop inside another for loop here. And then it's going to start printing out its lines. It's going to say j is initialized to 0 at first. Now, as long as j is less than or equal to 14, we are going to increment j plus 1. So is j less than or equal to 14? Oh, yes, it is. So it's less than 14. It's going to increment. Now, when it increments, it's going to skip this part, and I will explain why shortly. It's going to skip this part, so you can comment out this statements for now, and it's going to come here and put char. So essentially what this is a modulus operator, and it's going to check the modulus by 10. It's going to check for a remainder. So 1, so j originally 0, it's going to check 0 divided by 10 if we have a remainder, and no, we don't have a remainder. So it's going to move on to the next line and print out 1. So essentially what this line does is, especially this line now, if you're wondering what this plus this does, is we are using a character here. Put char, print out a character, okay, a single character. And when we use put char here, we are telling it to print out a character, but what we have is digits. So what this line essentially does, it converts whatever the result of this is to characters. So it converts it to a character, and then putchar can now see this as a character. So that's essentially what this line does. Now, why do we have this if statement here? Remember I said our code is going to, this J code is going to skip here first. That's because when we print, once it goes ahead to print out all of these up until it increments to 10 here, if we don't have this if statement, it's going to start again from 0. So if it has finished printing out whatever it wants to print out, it has incremented its values from 0 all the way to 10. We are saying if the j value now has gotten to 10, because 10 modulus 10, so this is a modulus operator, and if it has gotten to 10, 10 modulus 10, that is 10 divided by 10, the remainder is 0. So it's going to come out and print 0. But with this if statement, we are saying if j is greater than or equal to 10, rather than print 0, add 1. So it's going to make that 0 now turn to 10. So it's going to print out 10. And then it would, if it comes back to this if statement again, that is if j is now 10, it would increment j to 11 and then add 1 to whatever the remainder is. So 11 modulus 10 is actually remainder 1. So it's going to add 1 to the remainder 1, which will print 11 row. So basically, simply put, without this if statement, we will not be able to print out 14 lines. If we remove this if statement, we won't print out 14 lines. But if we put this if statement, we would be able to complete this part that says print 0 to 14. Without the if statement, we could only print the number 10 times, and then it will start from 0 again. But now, with the 0 to 14, with the if statement, we can print up to 14 lines. So that's essentially what this code here does, and that's essentially it. Now for this put char in, whenever we're using the put char, we have to put this single quote, so you make it know that it's a character, and this is just a new line character, which is part of our requirement. So we are asked here to print out a new line and followed by a new line. So That put char is just the requirement per se. So basically, this is the code to get on with task 5, and this would now print 10 numbers and 14 lines from 10 rows, rather 10 rows, just the way it is here. You can count the row. This 1, this 2, this 3, this 4. It will print these 10 rows, and then it's going to, so this first part of the statement here is going to help us print out 10 rows. And then this second part of the statement, this part of the statement, this part itself is going to help us increment values. So it's going to help us be able to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. So it's that second part of the statement, this part, that's going to help us do that. And then this last part is what will help us print the things out on the screen. And this one is a new line. Now, I hope this code does not look too vague again. You understand what each part will do. This part will print out the 10 rows. This second part would help us print out from 0 to 14. And then this last part would help us display everything out on the screen. This one is a new line. So that's that for that. I'll save my code now, and as always, check it out with Betty coding style. And let's see. Okay, it says we have plenty errors now. We have a warning in line 10, missing a blank line after declarations. We have errors in line 10 that says spaces are required around these parameters. So let me explain this now. It's Betty coding style. It's saying it wants space around where I use the less than or equal to sign, and then the greater than or equal to sign. So let's go ahead and fix that now. And our errors are in line 10, 10, 12, and 14. So let's go ahead, fix that. We have 2 errors in line 10, 1 in line 12, and 1 in line 14. So line 10, first off, you can see we are in line 10, and it says after declarations, I should put a space here. So after declaration, I should press enter. Now fix line 10. This is line 12. So now it's line 13. And it says it needs a space here. So I'm going to do just that. And I think here too, the same thing. And I think here too, it would need a space. Now let's go ahead and check out if Betty still has complaints for us. Oh, supposed to use Betty, not VI, sorry. So let me clear my terminal now so you see if Betty still has warning for us. All right, no more errors from Betty, and that's it for task 5. Now I can save at this point. Now I can git add, as always, git commit, and git push. So if you watch, I've not been adding, committing, and pushing because I've just been doing the tasks from all of them. So if you're sure about it, if you're testing your codes and you're compiling by yourself, you could git add, git commit, and git push. But if you feel the process to test your code or your terminal is too stressful, then you could commit it and then push. So from task 0 to 5, that would be my commit message, and then I can now git push, and yes, all my files are now on GitHub. So once the checker is out from here, I can check my codes. No, but the checker is not out now, and that's why you have the test functions to test your codes by yourself. All right, so I've done from tax 0 to tax 5. We have 9 mandatory tasks, and I've done about 6 of them, starting from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I want to ask you a question at this time.
Try now. I don't try. I don't try. I beg when I talk. If I don't try when I talk now, when I don't say I try, but I don't try. Peace.
So rather than do all for you, I want you to go ahead and fix the rest by yourself. Now, what you want to do is to do tax 6, tax 7, tax 8, and 9 with your own hands. You know how to first start. Now you can only use the put char function to print. When n is the number of times, if now you can see that in this statement, you're going to have an if. No, you're going to have an if statement here. You can see that you're going to have a new line somewhere here. You're going to use 0. You're going to use these parameters a lot in your statements. So go ahead and try to fix it out by yourself. Now, in case you have challenges and you don't know what to do, you can compare with my GitHub account. But before you compare, just look at the statement again. It says you should use the put char function to print. You should print a new line, and then you should draw a straight line in the terminal. And when n is the number of times character should be printed, to draw a straight line. So you want to read this question again and again, and go ahead and try to fix it up. So first off, you are going to set an integer. You already know that. So be able to draw a straight line, and you could call the integer anything. Now you're going to use a for loop, and n is not, we are not told the number of times the character should be printed. So you're going to initialize your integer to 0, and then you're going to say I less than n, because n, we don't know what n is now. So anything your integer is, if you use I for your integer, or if you use A, if you use B, anything you use to as your integer name, as your variable name, as your variable name. So you're going to declare a variable, not an integer, You're going to declare a variable, and anything that's your variable name, you're going to say that variable name is going to be less than n. And then as long as the variable name is less than n, it should increment it. If you still don't understand from these examples, don't worry, it's normal. So you come to my GitHub here and compare. But if you can do it from here, fine. Thank you so much, guys. Later in my special intense learning class, we'll still be talking about the basics of C. But if you want to know C from scratch, from the basics, I've dropped a video on C. The part 1 is out already, and it's on my YouTube channel here. So go ahead and check out the video. As always, this is Bright from B-Wave ICT, and thank you so much. Please like and subscribe to B-Wave ICT, my channel here. And you can always ask me questions in the comments. Until some other time, it's a goodbye from me.